If you don't come back home, I will cut your throat." These were the words a 10-year-old girl heard from her own father before leaving on what would be her last trip. She didn't know it yet, but her fate was already sealed, and when she returned home, there was no way out. What happened in that house was so brutal that to this day, neighbors believe something dark still lingers there. But what drove this father to commit such an atrocity? How were the warning signs ignored? And most importantly, could this horror have been prevented? Today, we will dive deep into a crime that could have been stopped, but instead became one of Hollywood's most tragic cases. Get ready, because this story is unlike anything you've ever heard. If you're fascinated by cold cases, secret files, unsolved disappearances, and supernatural phenomena, you've just found your new favorite channel. Subscribe now, turn on notifications to never miss a new video, and share with others. Don't forget to hit the like button. It helps us create even better content every day. It was just another night in Los Angeles. The streets were quiet, the silence only broken by the distant hum of cars passing on the main avenue. But inside that house, something terrible was about to happen. The little girl was asleep in her bed, hugging her favorite teddy bear. Her mother, exhausted, was folding clothes as if she were planning to leave. Downstairs, a man sat at the table, a glass of whiskey in his hand and a vacant stare in his eyes. He knew exactly what he was going to do that night. This is the story of one of the most brutal crimes ever committed against a young Hollywood star. A tragedy that could have been prevented, but for years was ignored by those who could have done something. And the worst part, all the signs were there, screaming to be noticed. But how did it come to this? How did a girl who had the world at her feet, with a promising career, end up at the center of such a horrifying story? To understand what happened that night, we need to go back a few years. We need to understand how it all began. Hollywood is a place where dreams come true, and for this little girl, it seemed like destiny had already been written. From a young age, her natural talent for acting caught the attention of producers and directors. She didn't have to try too hard. Her sweetness, her innocent smile, and her captivating gaze won over everyone. At just 5 years old, she was discovered by a talent scout while ice skating. From that moment on, her life changed forever. Commercials, TV shows, and even movie roles began filling her schedule. But while the bright lights of fame shone on her, lurking in the shadows was a monster, waiting for his moment. The young actress's success didn't just bring money and fame, it brought tension into her own home. Her father, a man with a violent temper and a drinking problem, felt like he was losing control. With every new role, with every paycheck that came in, his resentment grew. The money was all managed by her mother, who saw in her daughter the realization of a dream she had never achieved for herself. But to him, it was humiliation. He couldn't stand watching his wife and child receive all the attention while he sank into his own failures. And then, the signs began to appear. The neighbors knew, the friends knew. Even the little star's talent agents noticed something was off. But no one did anything. Or rather, no one did enough to stop what was about to happen. Shortly before, everything fell apart. The little girl started exhibiting strange behaviors. She pulled out her eyelashes, sat in silence for hours, and on some nights, she couldn't sleep. But it was only when she made a disturbing comment to a school friend that people started to realize the danger. "My dad said he's going to kill my mom, and then he's going to kill me too." These words were spoken by a child, but like so many other warning signs, they were ignored. And then came the final night. What happened in that house was the climax of a horror that could have been avoided. But before we reach that point, we need to understand every detail of this nightmare. Who was this man really? How did he manage to hide his darkest side for so long? And most importantly, why? Did no one stop this tragedy? The cameras rolled, the lights illuminated the stage, and the sound of laughter filled the air. In the center of it all was a little girl, no older than 10, charming everyone around her. She was the perfect child star, the kind that directors and producers dream of. But behind her angelic smile and perfect lines hid a growing darkness. What the audience never saw was what happened when the cameras stopped rolling. The applause faded, and she returned home to a place that wasn't filled with glamour and success. Instead, it was a battlefield, a house ruled by fear, where every night felt like walking on a razor's edge. Her rise to fame was swift. One minute, she was an unknown child, ice skating for fun, and the next, she was America's sweetheart. Commercial after commercial, guest appearances on popular shows, and even starring roles in major Hollywood films. By the time she was 8, she had appeared in over 70 commercials and was making more money than most adults. For the outside world, she had it all. But at home, the money that was supposed to bring security only brought more danger. Her father, once an unknown immigrant struggling to make a living, now watched his daughter become the family's breadwinner. And he hated it. The more she succeeded, the angrier he became. He despised the way his wife doted on their daughter, the way producers praised her, the way the money came in under her name instead of his. It was a wound to his pride that festered into something dark, something uncontrollable. Neighbors began to notice strange things. The little girl would show up with bruises on her arms, but they were brushed off as accidents. Her mother would often be seen with swollen eyes, always hiding behind large sunglasses. And at night, the arguments would get so loud that even the thick walls couldn't contain them. But it wasn't just shouting. There were threats. Horrific threats that made even the most seasoned officers uneasy when they heard them later. The father would tell his wife, "If you ever leave me, I will kill you. And I will kill her too, so you can suffer alone." The girl was forced to live with this fear every day. She wasn't just scared of her father. She knew what he was capable of. She had seen his rage, felt his anger, and heard his terrifying promises. And despite everything, she still had to smile. For the cameras, her mother knew. She knew that the house they lived in was no longer a home. It was a prison. She knew that every day she stayed, she risked both of their lives. And finally, she decided she had to leave. She made a call. She reached out to a shelter for abused women, desperate to find a way out. She even spoke with social workers begging for help. But the system failed her, and as she hesitated, time ran out. Somewhere in that house, a decision was being made. A final, irreversible decision. And in just a few hours, the nightmare that had been brewing for years would finally reach its bloody conclusion. The night started like any other. The little girl, exhausted from her busy schedule, had fallen asleep clutching her teddy bear. Her mother, emotionally drained, sat in the living room, contemplating her next move. But her father, he had already made his. He had been drinking. The familiar stench of whiskey filled the air as he paced the hallway. But this time, there was something different about his presence, something colder. He wasn't just drunk, he was ready. What happened next was swift, chillingly methodical. First, he entered the little girl's room. In one calculated movement, he raised the gun and fired. She never woke up. The bullet struck her in the head, instantly ending her short, promising life. Then, he turned to his wife. She had no time to fight. No time to scream. No time to beg for her daughter's life. In a matter of seconds, everything she had feared had come true. But he wasn't done. With their lifeless bodies lying in the house, he moved to the next step of his plan. He doused their corpses in gasoline. The smell filled the air, seeping into the walls, into the carpets, into every last reminder of what once was. And then, he set the house on fire. By the time the neighbors saw the smoke and called the police, it was already too late. Inside, the fire raged, erasing any last trace of the tragedy. Outside, the man responsible for it all was sitting in the garage, gun in hand, waiting for the inevitable. When officers arrived, the scene was more horrifying than they could have ever imagined. The remains of the little girl were found in her bed, her small frame barely visible beneath the charred sheets. Her mother was found in the hallway, a mere few steps away from what could have been her escape. And the man, responsible, dead by his own hand, a bullet through his skull. The investigation that followed revealed what many had suspected but never acted on. There had been warnings. So many warnings. Friends, neighbors, even professionals had seen the signs. But in the end, no one had done enough. After the tragedy, the house stood empty. But for those who lived nearby, it never truly felt abandoned. Strange occurrences began to surface, lights flickering at odd hours, unexplained whispers in the night, shadows moving where no one should be. Some claim that the little girl's spirit never left, that she still lingers, trapped in the place where her story was cut short. Others believe that the weight of the crime itself cursed the property forever. But one thing remains certain: no one who enters that house ever leaves unchanged. This tragedy is a reminder that sometimes the monsters we fear aren't lurking in the shadows. They're right in front of us, hiding in plain sight. And the scariest part, too often their warnings go unheard until it's far too late. So, tell me, was this horror inevitable? Or could someone have saved her? The flames may have consumed the house. The bodies may have been buried. But the echoes of what happened in those final moments, they never faded. They linger in the whispers of those who still remember, in the files of investigators who pieced together the evidence, and in the hearts of those who wonder, what if? For years, this case has haunted Hollywood, standing as one of the darkest tragedies in the industry's history. It's not just because it was a brutal crime, it's because it could have been prevented. The warning signs weren't hidden. They were out in the open, screaming to be heard, but no one listened until it was too late. Let's take a moment to go back, not to the night of the crime, but to the moments before it. The small, seemingly insignificant details that, when put together, painted a chilling picture of what was to come. She told her friends she was scared to go home. She told them she had nightmares, that her father drank too much, that she didn't feel safe. But how often do we dismiss the fears of a child as nothing more than imagination? Her mother reached out to authorities. She spoke to social workers. She filed a report. But in a world where paperwork stacks higher than urgency, the help she needed never arrived in time. How many times have we seen this story play out before? A desperate plea for help, drowned in bureaucracy and delay. But let's talk about something often overlooked, the impossible position this mother was in. We might ask, why didn't she just leave? Why did she stay knowing the danger? But leaving isn't always as simple as packing a bag and walking. Out the door, he had already told her what he would do. He had made it clear, if you try to leave me, I will kill you. I will kill her, and you will have to live with that. The fear of leaving was just as real as the fear of staying. Because, in the mind of a man like that, control was everything. And the moment she took that control away, she knew exactly what would happen. She had plans. She had saved money. She had even secured an apartment in secret. But hesitation cost her everything. And now, we're left asking, how many others are living in this same nightmare right now, waiting for an escape that may never come? After the crime, the house remained empty for years, but those who dared to step inside claimed it wasn't truly vacant, that there was something left behind, a presence, an energy, maybe just the weight of tragedy, or maybe something more. The new owners reported strange occurrences, lights flickering, cold spots in certain rooms, and the most unsettling of all, the sound of footsteps where no one was standing. A family who moved in after the incident described the overwhelming sensation of being watched. A little girl's voice, barely audible, calling out at night. Was it imagination, or was someone still lingering there, trapped in the last place they ever knew? The truth is, this wasn't just a tragedy, it was a preventable one. And if we don't learn from stories like this, we are doomed to repeat them. How many more voices will go unheard? How many more warnings will be ignored? How many times will we look back and say, if only we had done something? If you or someone you know is in a situation like this, don't wait. Don't assume someone else will step in. Be the one who listens, because one conversation, one call, one act of intervention could mean the difference between a tragedy and a second chance. This case will always serve as a reminder of how fragile life is. How the people who seem the happiest, who shine the brightest, can be the ones suffering the most behind closed doors. And how sometimes the monsters we fear the most aren't hiding in the shadows. They live right among us. So now, I leave you with one question. If you had been there, if you had seen the signs, would you have done something? Or would you have looked the other way? Judith Barsi was born on June 6, 1978, in Los Angeles, California, to Hungarian immigrant parents, Josef and Maria Barsi. Her parents had fled Hungary separately during the Soviet occupation in 1956, and later reunited by chance in the United States, where they began building their new life together. Judith's journey into the spotlight began at just 5 years old when she was discovered while ice skating. Her natural charm and talent quickly made her a rising star in Hollywood. Over the course of her short career, she appeared in over 70 commercials, numerous television shows, and several films. Her most notable roles included voicing Ducky in The Land Before Time and Anne-Marie in All Dogs Go to Heaven. Both films, released after her passing, serve as lasting testaments to her extraordinary talent and potential. Despite her young age, Judith's contributions to entertainment left an indelible mark, and her legacy continues to resonate with those who remember her bright smile and incredible spirit. This story is more than just tragedy. It's a haunting reminder of the dangers that can hide in plain sight. If this case left you speechless, leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts. And if you're drawn to chilling true crime, stories like this one, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Every week, we uncover new mysteries. Will you be brave enough to join me?